Good evening. I'm your host, Sam Matheny, and alongside me is my co-host, Matt Bruzas. We ask you to please excuse our momentary interruption of sports from your regular daily schedule. Let's get right into it. Fighting in hockey is deeply rooted in its culture. However, there is growing opposition to ban fighting in hockey. Should the NHL ban fighting?
I don't think they should, because I think it gives players the upper hand to get momentum. I think that if the team is down 2 goals and they need some momentum and some energy in the team, then that's what they're going to do. They're going to try and fight a player who just had a big hit on the opposing player. And so one of the things that I also like about fighting is that in hockey, you're able to stand up for one of your other star players. And so, like, if your star players like Patrick Kane or Alex DeBrincat, who are 5'11", 5'10", they're not going to be the tallest and strongest guy. So you're going to need someone else who's the enforcer to stand up for those guys and take those hits and go with them.
I think if you want to watch fighting, you might as well go watch UFC or the PBC. Honestly, I think that the fighting, it encourages unfair gameplay to these kids who are trying to watch. Sportsmanship's completely out the window when you think about this. And you look at our younger generations, I think them growing up and learning about how we handle things as men or women, I think that's just not fair. I don't think that's how it should be done. Yeah, but one of the things I also think is that the refs are right there when they're controlling the fights. And so, like, if the fight breaks down to the ice, they're able to stop it. If the fight is at a stalemate between the 2 players, the refs are able to stop it. It's not like they're grueling and it's not in a 20-minute grudge match. And so I think that it's just a way for these players to find a way to get momentum and get back in the game and try and win the game first and foremost. But imagine if this happened in the NFL and they allowed fights. I get that it's a different sport, but it would turn into another Myles Garrett assault on Mason Rudolph. I think that the reason that they fight, yes, it's tradition. I understand that. But at the same time, it's basically just glorifying the fact that you can punch people and beat the living crap out of them just for fun. It's not trying to beat the living crap out of them. It's trying to get energy, build solidarity, being up and sticking up for your teammates. And so you're going to get a penalty for it. It's a 5-minute major. And so that's penalty is enough. And so you're trying to get your team back into the game. It's all for the purpose of trying to be into the game, get your head into the game, and be a physical sport. Do you think that this will lead to further issues down the road, like concussions, mental health issues, or even death? Do you think this even happens? Do you think that the effects of fighting in hockey hurt or help that? I think obviously there's always a chance for injuries like concussions and further dangerous injuries when you're fighting in hockey. But one of the things I also think about is that you have a helmet on and you have a mouth guard, and so you're swinging on ice, and so the punches aren't going to be as fully landed as you would if you were on solid ground. Next up, the National Soft League. We'll be right back here with more PEOMIOSFYRDS. Please excuse this commercial break.
Warhawks know what it takes to become champions. At the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, our student athletes pursue excellence with a determination that inspires everyone on campus. Warhawks are smart. Warhawks are strong. Warhawks value service. We prepare our student athletes for life after college. The University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. Come be part of the Warhawk family.
UWW-TV has been an important part of the campus and community since 1980.
Not only providing on-air learning opportunities for broadcast journalists and electronic media production students,
but educating and entertaining our audiences with award-winning news, live sports coverage, original programming,
as well as dedicating the mission to developing creative collaborations throughout campus.
For more information, visit our website, our 24/7 stream, and like us on Facebook.
Check us out because you gotta see what's on UWW-TV.
UW Whitewater Athletics, a relentless pursuit of excellence across 22 sports, powered by a tradition of success. 20 national championships, 17 since 2002. 61 individual national titles. 24 National Athletes of the Year. 616 All-Americans. 115 Conference Scholar Athletes of the Year. 1,500 community service hours annually. Be a part of the tradition and join the Warhawk family.
Here at UW-Whitewater Intramural Sports, we have a motto: a sport for everyone and everyone in a sport.
Come on! counting.
Had a blast. Always have fun at intramurals.
Every day we strive to go above and beyond that goal by providing healthy exercise, promoting leisure education, and giving students that competitive atmosphere they are looking for.
Yes! Yes!
It's exciting. Brings me back to those high school days with Friday Night Lights.
With our 25 different intramural sports offered, we guarantee that we have a sport for you. Go to our website and find your sport today.
While paper facial coverings can only be used once, other facial coverings should be washed after every use to reduce the risk of spreading germs. Some facial coverings can be laundered, but washing them with soap and water in the bathroom is also an effective and efficient method for disinfecting. The students shown here wore their facial covering until they entered the bathroom, thoroughly washed it with dish soap and water, and brought it to their room to air dry. Always allow your mask to dry completely before reuse. If you do not have dish soap at your disposal, please use the provided hand soap in the community bathrooms.
Welcome back to Please Excuse our momentary interruption of sports from your regular daily schedule. The roughing the passer rule in the NFL has been one of the most controversial rules in the league in recent years. Recently, quarterbacks are looking for the call every time they get hit. Is the NFL and quarterbacks getting too soft?
I don't think they are, because I think they're still allowing some hits to take place. It's just the shoulder or helmet to the helmet of the offensive player. And so one of the things that I think that the NFL is trying to do is make a way for defenders to hit the quarterback, try and do it in a different way so they take the helmet to helmet hit out of the game. That's what the big issue is, and that's what they're trying to do. In 2020, the NFL reduced concussions by 5%, which is progress, but it's not where they want to be, and they're starting to make progress on it and trying to avoid injuries like that.
Of course they're acting too soft. I mean, half the calls are bailout calls for the quarterback because they get hit in the arm. I mean, just look at Tom Brady in that last Super Bowl. He puts his hands up and a guy pokes his shoulder. I mean, I think that these quarterbacks, they need to understand that it's a contact sport. I get that times are changing. There's more scientific research behind it, but I do think they're acting too soft.
Tom Brady is one outlier in this, because Tom Brady is going to ask for those calls every time. Tom Brady doesn't want to get the hit, doesn't want that contact. But if you're someone like Derek Carr, where it was the Williams hit where William Hayes tore his ACL on that hit, on that sack, and Derek Carr said after the game he actually wanted that contact. He wanted him to land on him, and so he would have rather taken the sack and the hit than William Hayes tear his ACL.
Yep, that's a good point you bring up. But I think that half the QBs in the league just aren't following the rules, and they're not wearing the proper equipment that the NFL is giving them for free. Like if you talk about mouth guards, rib protectors, back plates, I think that they need to be wearing them. And players like Aaron Rodgers, who says, I'm one of those old school players that doesn't like to wear them, I understand that. That's your choice. But at the same time, they have to be aware of the effects that happen, such as like when Aaron Rodgers fell on his collarbone. Given that wasn't really led to those three pieces of equipment, but I still think that it leads to injuries.
Yeah, and I think for the Aaron Rodgers injury, there was a different way that he could have landed on his body to avoid an injury like that. But these quarterbacks are saying that these roughing the passer calls are taken away from the game. And the bottom line is that we just have to focus on the game and not having these quarterbacks try and have bailout calls. But I also think that the quarterbacks are going to want to welcome that hit, because it makes them get into the game, have them get into a rhythm in the game. And so they want to make sure that they feel getting a sack or two and before they feel and get into the rhythm of the game, which is important for most quarterbacks.
That's a great point you bring up, because players like Andrew Luck, there's videos of him like giving players high five saying, nice hit there, 94. You know, a lot of those players, like you said, they do want to make sure that they get those hits to start, not during the game, but they want to understand that they can get hit without being injured.
Yeah, and one of the things I also think is that these injuries where William Hayes, like tearing his ACL, that's just a freak thing that happened. And so like most of these big hits that you see, they're going to be freak things that happens because because there's different ways of techniques to tackle. And so one of the things that they are trying to do is trying to lower the hit. They're lowering the target area, and so the offensive player has to make sure that they don't lower that target area so the defender doesn't hit them in the head.
Do you think what the NFL is asking defensive players to do is impossible?
I think to a certain degree, because you're going at full speed and the offensive player is also going at full speed, and in that moment you're trying your best to avoid going helmet to helmet. But then that's when we see a unnecessary roughness call come into play. And that's where you have to have consistency across the board and making sure that the dangerous hits are being called and not the bailout ones.
Next up, NBA conferences and esports taking the world by storm. We'll be right back with more PEOMIOSFYRDS.
On. Flip them off. 91.7 WSUW. 91.7 is a student-run radio station serving the Whitewater area with a variety of original programs, live sports broadcasting, community events, and more. So turn us on. 91.7 FM. Or stream us live at 917theedge.com.
UW Whitewater Athletics, a relentless pursuit of excellence across 22 sports, powered by a tradition of success. 20 national championships, 17 since 2002. 61 individual national titles. 24 National Athletes of the Year. 616 All-Americans. 115 Conference Scholar Athletes of the Year. 1,500 community service hours annually. Be a part of the tradition and join the Warhawk family.
As an Army ROTC cadet at Whitewater, you have the opportunity to develop into a great leader while learning and applying the Army values to your everyday life. Within ROTC, you have the chance to travel overseas in the CULP program to train with other militaries, attend many elite Army schools such as Airborne and Combat Diver, and you have the opportunity to attend conferences and guest lectures by some of the Army's top-ranking officers. Our Warhawk cadets participate in many extracurricular activities, Division III sports, Greek life, intramural sports, among many other team building and community service events. Being a cadet at Whitewater is more than just being part of the Army. It's also about being active members in our community and coming together to form a family atmosphere. Anyone who wants to be a part of something bigger than themselves while developing themselves professionally should consider UW Whitewater ROTC. To sign up for UW Whitewater ROTC, go to the 4th floor of McCutcheon Hall to room 417.
For the health and safety of those living on campus, all residence hall water fountains have been turned off. However, the refill component remains active, so students can fill up their water bottles hands-free.
Welcome back to Please Excuse Our Momentary Interruption of Sports from your regular daily schedule. The Eastern Conference has been thought of as the weaker link in the NBA for the last 2 decades now, leaving better players in the West to miss the playoffs to inferior teams in the East. Should the NBA get rid of conferences altogether to promote better playoffs for fans?
I think they should, but only for the playoffs. I think that obviously if you throw out this year because the East is better this year from top to bottom, I think that it would be way better for more intriguing matchups. It would be more excitement across the league. And I think it would get more fans involved in the game of basketball, especially for the playoff runs. And especially for the weeks leading into the playoffs, because those are when teams like in the 7, 8, and 9 seed try and compete for a spot in the playoffs. Since only 16 teams make it. And so I think this would be a great way for the NBA to get more fans and more viewers tuned into the games.
That's a good point you bring up about how they should only have the conferences for the playoffs, but if you think about that, that just means they should be removed altogether, because the only reason the conferences are there is for the standings. And I think the conferences are actually kind of fine where they are. Since 1970, the West and East conferences have both been pretty even in terms of NBA titles. You look at the West, they have 27, and the East having 23. And I think fans can just look back at history and see for themselves that these conferences are good the way they are.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I also think that there is some structure and balance to the conferences right now. But I think one thing that can be improved on and it can be a beneficiary of is new playoff matchups. And so one of the things that for example, if you're the Milwaukee Bucks, you would have an easy round in the first round. But say if you place against the Warriors, you may only win in 6 or maybe win in 7. And it's also maybe you face the LA Clippers in one of the semifinal rounds. If it was current, they would be eliminated in the semifinals versus the Lakers and you wouldn't even play them. I think it would just have more intriguing matchups and you could see more excitement and more compete level from these players.
Now going back to the regular season for a second, do you think that the schedule that they have between the interconference matchups, do you think it's good the way they are? Or do you think it needs to be changed a little bit more so there's more interconference matchups?
I think it's good the way they are. They still play a good variety of East and West teams, and so I think that's how it should be, because you're then getting to play all the teams in the NBA, which is good because then you see new competition and you're always trying to see what you can improve on. Seeing new players is always good for your team, trying to isolate what you can do better and what you need to improve on. I think this is what they need to do because, again, it's all about matchups and it's all about the seeing what matchup is best to bring in the best viewers.
Now, I would have to say no. I think the NBA is pretty good in their Eastern versus Western conferences when it comes to giving them equal matchups. If there still will be conferences, I think what they have down is good on paper. I think that you need to play those teams in your conference in order to get a feel for them before going into the playoffs. But like you said, if there were to be no conferences, I think it should just be a random luck of the draw when it comes to who these teams will play.
Yeah, and it's all one of the things that I found interesting was that the 76ers, Nets, Bucks, and Knicks, who were the bottom 4 teams in the Eastern Conference in 2016, are now the top 4 in 2021. And so I think that proves that just how balanced the East is now, because you still have dominant teams like the Celtics, like the Raptors. The Hornets are now a young, up-and-coming team. And I also think that the Pacers are going to be there too. And so I think that the East and West are now balancing out where you don't have to have conferences, and you can now have really good matchups if you're going East versus West earlier in the playoffs.
You kind of just said it earlier though, with having more interconference matchups. I think it's fine the way it is. I think it'll be good for the sport to continue to have these conferences, but I guess only time will tell. Next up, the rise of esports. Right back after this commercial break.
At the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, we're passionate about learning. Our talented faculty members blend teaching with research, creating hands-on learning experiences for students. Warhawk Pride thrives at UW-Whitewater, where student athletes excel on the field and in the classroom, where diversity is celebrated. A tradition of excellence. Find your passion here.
Video One Media Services provides accomplished students the opportunity to enhance their college experience by working with real-world clients. In addition, we provide clients local and affordable video options to better enhance their media needs. For more information on how Video One Media Services can help you with your next media project, email or call our office at 262-472-5659.
UW Whitewater Athletics, a relentless pursuit of excellence across 22 sports, powered by a tradition of success. 20 national championships, 17 since 2002. 61 individual national titles. 24 National Athletes of the Year. 616 All-Americans. 115 Conference Scholar Athletes of the Year. 1,500 community service hours annually. Be a part of the tradition and join the Warhawk family.
Practicing social distancing is imperative to maintaining safety in the residence halls this year in lounges and common areas. For kitchens and laundry rooms, we have capped occupancy at 2 students in these spaces at any given time. Students will not be allowed to wait for their laundry in the laundry rooms, and if 2 students are already in the space switching laundry, please wait outside for one to leave. We ask that those using these spaces are efficient with their time, so all students have the option to use the common areas as needed. We thank you in advance for your cooperation.
Welcome back to Please Excuse our momentary interruption of sports from your regular daily schedule. Esports is one of the fastest growing industries in the world, if not the fastest. However, some still refuse to acknowledge it as a real sport. Should esports be treated like traditional sports, or should it be treated more like entertainment?
It should be treated like entertainment because it's all hype. Like esports is just you living vicariously through someone else who can play a video game better than you can. There's no training involved. There's no physical activity. Yeah, you are trying. Yeah, you're doing the best to play the video game to the best of your ability, but you're still not putting in the best training. You're not training that like other athletes can do, and so it's just entertainment because you're putting out a service that other people can listen to. You're adding commentary. It's just entertainment at this point.
I disagree. This is ridiculous. I even think this. Esport is not just hype. It produces real-world impacts like a sport does. The thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, and it's on its way to becoming a bigger business than the NFL is right now. And this is a once-in-a-lifetime, once-in-a-generation opportunity for these players. And it is a sport because esports has bridged the gap between nerds and jocks through shared competition. And esports provides much of the same emotional impact that you would have if you were on a physical team. For instance, it brings people together socially. And just like a football team, it does that too. This is no different than a football team.
So do you think The Bachelor is a sport, the thrill of agony, the agony of defeat? how can you really think that esports is going to be a sport? There's no physicality or mental aspect into the game, and you're not having the same training that all these sports do. It's not actually a sport. You're just sitting there controlling a video game.
Okay, first things first. It's not just controlling a video game. It requires a lot of mental preparation. Some of these games, it takes people years to even master. And the thing about it is that with COVID's impact around the world, I think it's actually made this electronic form of entertainment, I think it has made it a sport. Because kids all over the country have been told that they can't go hang out with their friends, play football, all that kind of stuff. But then they're able to play a football video game together. I think that really helps it, and I think that this is just, I'm a strong believer that COVID-19 has helped the esports community. Without it, it wouldn't have made it so popular.
Yeah, I agree that it's all about a team aspect and it brings people together, but it's also about ratings and your interest level. And so it's just, I think that there's more to a sport than what than esports provides.
That'll do it for us here tonight. Thank you for watching, and tune in next time to hear more hot takes all around the world of sports. This has been Please Excuse Our Momentary Interruption of Sports from your regular daily schedule on UWW-TV.